tens of thousands of workers. So you're going to see, even if the U.S. markets do reopen later this week, very thin volume and very thin trading.
And traditionally, in times of disaster, investors look to the dollar as a source of strength. But this really a strike at the heart of the U.S. financial infrastructure, also an attack on the dollar.
Exactly. During the Gulf War, other world crises, people rushed to the dollar. Today, as you say, the dollar fell, not sharply, but it did fall against the two major currencies. So I think everyone is in shock in New York and in London. The big investment banks in London, a lot of them are American-owned. A lot of them sent their workers home early today. Who knows what the volume is going to be in London tomorrow, but some people we talked to on the phone today said, forget it. People just are not trading. We may be at our desk, but people are glued to the television and nobody is trading.
And hence a big incentive for governments, whether in the United States or in Europe, to keep those markets working and intervening if necessary.
If necessary. I think they'll look at the volume over the next few days and how fast things do get back to normal, both in New York and, frankly, in London, Frankfurt, and other capitals.
Let's look specifically at the response on the markets. Airlines very hard hit today. Shares in insurance companies down about 15%. Are those going to be long-term casualties?
They could be for quite a while. Airlines are always hit when there's a, quote, war footing, when people are nervous about, perhaps in this case, U.S. retaliation. After the Gulf War, people stopped flying, literally, especially business travelers and leisure travelers. People just were nervous to get on airplanes, so the airlines really took a dive then, the share prices, and people are very nervous about that. Now, as you mentioned, the shares really took a hit today.
Charles Goldsmith, the Deputy London Bureau Chief of the Wall Street Journal, on the repercussions of a terrorist attack which has exposed the vulnerability of the world's financial architecture.
Mark Asher has indeed not just exposed the vulnerability of the financial architecture, but the vulnerability of the United States itself. It's being described as the most audacious attack of terrorism committed anywhere in the world, a day like no other. Well, let's get some more reaction from the United States. We're joined now on the line from Washington by Martin Indyk. He's a senior fellow at the Brookings Institute, a former Assistant Secretary of State in the Middle East and a former ambassador to Israel. Martin Indyk, you've seen a lot of violence in your beat. Just how surprised were you by this act today?
Well, Lisa, I must say that I just left Israel a month ago with my family, and I thought that we were coming back away from the front lines. I never imagined that the front lines would be visiting us so quickly.
Well, I'm afraid we lost the line to Martin Indyk in the United States. We'll try to get him back up on the line so we can continue that discussion. Let's look at the latest from Washington, where the Pentagon was hit earlier in the day. My colleague Johnny Diamond is on the roof of the Chamber of Commerce and joins us now. Johnny, describe the scene for us all around you.
If it weren't so tragic, it would be described as surreal. The only thing that is moving directly in front of me is the White House fountain. There is one of the most famous views in the world here, the Washington Monument, a huge column of stone reaching into the sky, Jefferson Memorial, the White House itself. All of them completely deserted. The administrative center of Washington is silent. Everyone has left. The streets are roped off. Over to my right, in bright sunshine, it's a beautiful day here in Washington. Smoke is still coming out from the Pentagon. It's coming out more slowly now. One gets the impression that a fire which was described as very serious with significant damage, that fire might be now coming under control. No word at all of injuries. The political situation too, there is a White House briefing coming up in sometime, we think, in the next half hour. The president is reported to have landed in Nebraska at Moffett Air Force Base, which contains Strategic Air Command, and is convening a teleconference of national security officials. But here in Washington, a most bizarre scene, a city almost completely empty, bar police crews barring the way down most of the major streets towards the administrative center.
City empty but shocked. But from where the plane hit the Pentagon today, do we have any idea of what was lost in terms of infrastructure? That was Johnny Diamond, and fortunately, I hope still safe on the roof of the Chamber of Commerce in Washington, giving us a live update on what the city is like. A very grim city indeed. I think now, though, we can get another commentator from Washington, Martin Indyk, who we lost a few moments, has now joined us back. Martin, you were just describing how you left Israel, where you were the American ambassador just a few months ago, and had expected to come back to a life of relative calm in the United States. So this has been a rude awakening.
That's absolutely right. My son called me on the phone today from school. He of course, has lived through the trauma with us over the last year of the Intifada and the explosions and suicide bombings that have gone off in Israel. And I think he was very shaken today by watching on television the World Towers collapse. We'd only taken him up last year to that viewing tower on top of the World Towers. And it just drives it home in a very personal way how this kind of horrendous terror attack affects everybody living here in Washington and in New York in a very dramatic way. I would say an overwhelming way. I don't think that we can yet come fully to terms with the impact that this event is going to have on the lives of Americans.
Huge indeed. But we heard from the former Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, who you know well, that he believed that the United States wasn't taking sufficiently seriously this threat. Does he have a point?
Well, look, there'll be a lot of opportunity for assessment and finger pointing. I think that there's been a very large effort over the last few years to tighten security and to, in particular, go after the threat from the Osama bin Laden network. We don't know yet whether...
Return address. There was Japan. And in the end, Japan launched Pearl Harbor, and we struck back against Japan. Now we face the question, against whom do we strike? Where is the rogue states that they talk so much about? How do we know where it is? Clearly, if this is, as most people seem to think it is, the work of Osama bin Laden, he has to have a territorial base. He has to do it from somewhere. I mean, these people clearly were exquisitely trained to be able to get on board and somehow defy security and manage to get on there with weapons.